And Jake Paul knocks out the heavyweight champion of the world. Nah, he just knocked out Tyron Woodley. But in lieu of him being the heavyweight champion, he fucking killed him, I think. He may have murdered him. So for whatever it's worth, he may not have won the heavyweight champion. It may not have been Tyson or Muhammad Ali. But I think both Woodley's brain and heart stopped for a second there. I mean, that dude, he completed a 90-degree angle. My man's Tyron Woodley, no disrespect. He would probably beat my ass. We'll never know for sure, though. No disrespect. My man's turned into a geometry problem. That brother was a right angle. Quick right angle. He was 90 degrees and then flat. Instant right angle. Easy geometry lesson. What a fight for Jake Paul, though, eh? What a fight for Jake Paul, though, eh? I don't know. I don't think I expect. Well, let me be clear here. First and foremost, I didn't watch the fight. I didn't fucking care at all, to be honest. I don't really know how anybody cared. I guess Logan Paul, I could see how he cared. Jake Paul's friends and family, I could see that. Same for Tyron Woodley's friends and family. Normal people don't really know why they cared. He already fought him. Guy took the fight on like a couple weeks' notice, if that. He was begging for the rematch. Poor Tyron. This guy, he may need to collab with me and sell a few shirts if he needs a couple extra bucks. I'd be happy to do it. I'd be happy to do it, Tyron. But no, I don't know why anybody cared. I'll tell you when I did start caring, though. When my cousin texted me, "Did you see the knockout?" When I'm getting Instagram DMs, "You see the knockout?" This, that. People I haven't talked to in years. The guy who bags my groceries at the farmer's market, "Did you see the knockout?" When that happened, I was like, oh, I actually am kind of interested. And my God, was it a knockout? Who was it? The underhook, the guy that was wearing the state boxers or the state trunks not too long ago, like a month or two ago, hit that other dude with the uppercut, and that guy may have died. Since then, Jake Paul, outside of that uppercut, that might have been the most ferocious knockout I've ever seen. I mean, he straight up looked like he killed the guy. He straight up looked like Tyron Woodley was dead. The way he just face first collapsed, just dead. It was Tyron Woodley. He's standing, he's having a good time, and then why did this just become? There we go. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Feel bad for Tyron, to be honest. I mean, your entire career, your entire legacy is being a fighter, beating people's asses, being a mixed martial artist, and then you go and fight one of the members of the Low Gang. You fight the Jake Paulers or whatever he called his clan, and you get first you lose on decision. So the refs think, yeah, you weren't as good, and then you get sent to the nether realm. You get sent to Mars. You get sent back to the Stone Age. You get sent back to agrarian village time. You get sent back to the fucking future. That's how hard he punched you. Tough beat. Tough beat for Tyron Woodley. And you know what's the worst part? I liked him in the UFC. I always thought he was kind of a fun guy to cheer for. He looked fucking jacked. I mean, that never changed. He still is the most shredded guy alive. He looked scary. He talked a big game. He beat people. I was always like, Tyron Woodley, this guy's pretty sweet. Tough to bounce back from that if you're a Tyron Woodley fan. Even tougher to bounce back from that if you're Tyron Woodley himself. Let's talk Jake Paul, though. Let's talk Jake Paul. I mean, that's what's important. That's the big thing that happened. That's what people care about in this one. Where does Jake Paul go from here? I think now nobody cared about that fight, the rematch. Nobody cared about the rematch. Now that happened, and not only that he won, but he, put him in a cemetery in the middle of a canvas ring. The fact that he won the way he did, people are back in on Jake Paul. I'm back in on the Jake Paul saga. I want to know who he fights next. I'm going to watch whoever he fights next. What's interesting now is Jake Paul's path. So I think he handcuffed himself. No Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury's out. Tyson Fury's brother, one of the Fury clan from Peaky Blinders, Tommy Fury, he's out. He can go be a model. He can go nurse his kidney, spleen, whatever is wrong with him back to health. I think Tommy Fury's off the table. I don't think that moves the meter, to be honest. Jake Paul comes out, I'm fighting Tommy Fury next. Flaccid. Pass. Out. deflated balloon. I'll tell you this, though. I'll tell you this. Tommy Fury may not be in the cards. There are some names that are in the cards. There are some interesting names that are in the cards. There are a couple names, I don't want to say that would break the boxing world, but there are a few names that would do some things. Break. Let's face it. Jake Paul is the face of boxing right now. Jake Paul owns boxing. He runs boxing. He's the only Canelo, I suppose. He's the guy in boxing. He's the only boxer, if you want to call him a boxer or not, I don't care what you call him. He's the only boxer working today that I would even consider buying a pay-per-view for. He's the only guy. And yeah, it depends who he fights. And yeah, if he fights fucking Tommy Fury, like I just said, I'm not buying that shit. But Jake Paul, he's the only guy that has people like me, casuals. I'm not like a boxing diehard. I don't watch boxing. He's the only guy that has people like me interested in the sport of boxing. He runs boxing. I don't care who you're a fan of. I don't care if you hate Jake Paul. I don't care if you hate YouTubers. I don't care if you hate the Low Gang. I don't give a shit. It's a fucking fact. He's the face of boxing. He's the biggest draw in boxing outside of maybe Canelo. That's it. Anybody Jake Paul calls on, now he's the McGregor of boxing. You remember McGregor would give the, it's red panty night. When McGregor comes calling, it's red panty night. We're getting paid. Baby, we did it. That's Jake Paul. He doesn't have the cool accent. He doesn't have the whiskey company, following him around. That's Jake Paul now in boxing. Jake Paul gives you the tap. You are red panty night. You know you're getting paid. Probably the best day of your life, biggest payday of your life, biggest fight of your life, most eyeballs on you of your life. Jake Paul calls you, baby, we did it. Baby, we made it. That's that's the immediate reaction. And what's fucking wild, outside of maybe Mayweather, outside of maybe McGregor, any other combat athlete on earth gets that call, that's the scenario. Is Jake Paul's giving you the opportunity of a lifetime. It's not, yeah, a fight, maybe. It's, no. Hey, Anderson Silva. Hey, Jorge Masvidal. Hey, Nate Diaz. Like, you thought you were in some big fights before? You thought people bought pay-per-views before? You thought people cared about you before? Dog. No, sir. No, sir. Those pay-per-views before were like a tree falling down in a forest when nobody's around to hear it. Did it ever happen? This Jake Paul fight is going to be a tree falling across the 405 freeway, the 405 interstate in California. Silva, you thought you had big fights? Masvidal, you thought you'd been in some fights? Nate, you thought that McGregor fight was big? Jake Paul calls on any of those guys. It's one of the biggest boxing pay-per-views of all time instantly. Anybody who's mildly interested, he goes against one of those dudes. And I know Diaz and Masvidal and Silva, they're all MMA guys, but there's some bad motherfuckers. MMA's got legs, MMA's got submission, MMA's got wrestling. Bro, those guys box a fuck ton as well. Those guys are used to getting hit with essentially bare hands. Forget a padded glove. Those guys bring the juice. He beats one of those guys. I think Silva's the least interesting to me. But he beats Masvidal, or he fights Masvidal. He fights Diaz. Woo, baby, it's red panty night. Warm up the cookies. I'm in. I'm watching that. I'm fucking making a YouTube video about it. I can't wait. I think everybody in boxing obviously is in that. Everybody that's kind of a casual like me, you're in that. Even if you don't care about boxing, you're probably in that too. You're at least paying attention. The path now for Jake Paul, is the most interesting part. After that win, it's the path. Because he goes Diaz, he goes Masvidal. Who's the climb after that? My favorite, this is me. If I'm Jake Paul, this is what I do. You go Nate Diaz. Assuming you beat Nate Diaz, you need someone else. Conor McGregor. You each make $5 billion. You sell 100 billion, more pay-per-views than there are people on earth. I don't know how the math works on that. McGregor Paul would sell more pay-per-views than there are people on the planet Earth. That's a fact. That is a fact. They just would. I promise you they would. You get those two guys together, He beats Diaz. The McGregor makes sense. It's the biggest fight in the history of boxing. It's the biggest payday in the history of boxing. Jake Paul, he could probably retire today anyway. He fights McGregor, instant retire. McGregor could have retired years ago. They would each make at least $100 million. Be the biggest pay per view ever. It'd be the fight of the century. Jake Paul beats Diaz, which I think would be a great fight. I think people would love. Diaz is a zombie. I feel like Jake Paul hasn't really gotten pressed by a psychopath like Nate Diaz. You could hit that guy with a steel chair, he'd wake up like nothing was wrong with him. He beats Diaz. McGregor makes sense. He fights McGregor. It's the biggest fight in the history of boxing. Jake Paul runs boxing. Jake Paul runs boxing. I don't. McGregor, don't want to hear it. Mayweather, don't want to hear it. Canelo, maybe. I'll give you Canelo. Outside of Canelo, Jake Paul runs boxing. The path for him has become quite interesting. Gimme Diaz. Gimme Paul McGregor. Make me a boxing fan. It feels like the only way that you can do it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. Ooh. All right. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Leave a like, subscribe. We're doing all kinds of sports. We're doing football, hockey, soccer, football, boxing, baseball, soccer, hockey, basketball, everything. All sports. Subscribe, like, comment, TikTok, whatever. Thank you. We'll see you next time.